Hi there, this is Peter from 1301, and today we're going to be talking about a data type in Python known as strings. So you guys might have already gone over strings in class, but this is just kind of like a review video, just going over what strings are, what you can do with them, as well as just how they're going to be implemented across this course. So strings in Python are a immutable data type. Right here, I got that written right here. Basically, that means that if you have a string, you can't just individually go in and replace a character and just retain the same memory location for the string. So that basically kind of shows that if you want to change a string, you have to completely have a totally new string to replace that old string right there. You can't just change one character in there. So in Python, you can have any combination of characters as long as it's between double quotes or a single quote, and that's going to be denoted as a string. So it's just called a string one. So string one, it can just be hello world, and that's just gonna that's a string right there because it's in double quotes. So let's have string two, string two. So that's going to be another string because it's in single quotes. It doesn't really matter in Python. Some people prefer double quotes over single quotes, but say you want to have a string that has, a quote in it, right? So you want to start off with a single quote because you know that's going to be inside your string right there. So and then that's going to be another string right there because we use a single quotes to denote the string, but then inside we use double quotes, and that's perfectly fine. String can literally have any combination of characters in it. It doesn't really matter what there is for it. Like I said, anything can be a string. So let's go into our shell right here and let's have a variable named number. So when we do that, let's check the type. So you can check the type of a variable by just doing type, parentheses, the variable name. So you know that's an integer, right? To do string casting, call your variable again, and then reset it to the str parentheses of like the variable. It's gonna be a string. So that's just kind of how Python just does it. You can simply just go back and forth between a string and an integer. But let's try doing this other way around. So let's take a word. So word is going to be, let's make it a string of 1999. So that's going to be our word right there, a string of 1999. So let's try converting that into an integer now. So as you can see, everything works out perfectly fine. And now we can just check the type of word right there. It's an integer, right? So what if we had another thing called word1, and inside of it, it said hello. So now let's try taking word1 and then reassigning it to the integer version of word1. So what would happen here? There's an error thrown because as you can see inside this variable, hello, it doesn't have only numbers in it. And because of that, it can't be converted into an integer. Whereas word up here, 1999, it only has numbers in it. So when you try to cast into integer, everything worked out fine. So in Python, these string methods are kind of built into the programming language. So let's the first one is the counting method. So let's say we have test1 is going to be AAA, BBB, AAA. What count can do is you can just do test dot count, and then we can put our substring in. So what a substring is just like whatever, like I guess shorter string you want to find within the larger string. So let's say you want to find how many times A is inside of here. It's going to return 6 because there's 3 A's right here and 3 A's back here. These string methods will come in handy when you're trying to do your homework assignments. So another one is find substring. So basically what this will do is returns the lowest index of the substring. So let's just use test right here. So let's do test dot find. Let's try finding B. So as you can see, the lowest index of the substring is going to be index 3 right here. If you want to do test dot find A, what's going to happen then? You can't find any of these positions right here. It's just going to return 0 because that's where the lowest index returns right there. It's a pretty useful method when you're trying to find like a substring as long as there's no repeating characters. If not, you have to kind of iterate through the string. Also another method called string dot upper, and then string dot lower. say we have a name right here, and it's just going to be Peter. Peter is all lowercase right here, so we're going to try doing name dot upper, and let's see what that returns. It returns all uppercase, right? But when we try to print name again, what's going to happen? It's going to print lowercase, because doing name dot upper on this variable right here, it's not going to really change what this variable is pointing to, because we didn't really assign it. So let's try doing name equals name dot upper. So now we're reassigning the variable. So now we're going to try doing print name. So now what's going to print out is all uppercase versions. At the same time, you can just do name dot lower, and that's going to print out lowercase version. But then when you print off name again, uppercase version, because we reassigned it. And I think this is arguably one of the most important methods that you should know on a string. It's called the length method. So len, parentheses, and whatever string you want to find the length of. Let's just take this variable right here, name. So length of name. So what's that going to return? We know that Peter is with 5 characters in it, so it should return 5. And that's what it does. So basically what length can do, it can just tell you how long the string is, how many characters are within it. Let's try doing length test right there. It should return 9. And yeah, it just returns 9. So you'll kind of understand why this is so helpful later on down the road when you're trying to use a for loop or a while loop to iterate through a certain string. You can just use the length of it. Another good way to access strings is you can use indexing. So indexing, how you do it is you just literally take this string and then you put square brackets of whatever index you would like to access into this string. Let's take, for example, name up here. I'm just going to redeclare name right here. Okay, so we got name right there. We want to access the first character of Peter, index 0, and that gives me P right there. What if we want to access the last character, but we don't really want to count how many characters are in the string? So let's try doing name length of name. So we know that we're trying to index in the 5th position, but if you can see this, the 5th position is actually out of bounds, because although there are 5 characters, remember index always starts at 0. So when we enter this, we're going to get an error right here. So what we have to do if we want to access the last character is what we can just do length of name. And because length is also an integer value, you can just do -1, and that gives you R right there. So that is something else that you could just do of like how to access the last character. So indexing comes really in handy like later on down the road also if you're trying to like kind of find each individual character inside of a string. But for now, you just need to know how it works. The last thing about strings I want to go over today is string splicing right here. So what is splicing in strings? It kind of sounds like you're slicing into a string, and that's exactly what we're doing. So splicing, what we're doing is getting a string, and then it's very similar to indexing, except there are 3 components inside of splicing. You can have a start index, and then you can have a stop index, and then you can have the step. Within I guess like the start, stop, and step, all you really need is a stopping index. This start right here is going to be optional every single time, as well as this step right here. So let's say we have another string. I'm just going to call it string1. It's going to be equal to hello space world. Let's try to use some of the string methods now, right? So let's call it string1 dot find. We're going to try to find wherever the space is. Find it's at index 5. So now let's try using this new thing of string splicing and trying to get to wherever index 5 is right here, right? So like I said, if you don't have a start or a step, it's always going to be default for the start. Start is default to 0, and then your step is default to 1. So what that kind of means is that if you don't have a starting point or a step, it's always going to start at the very beginning, and then it's going to increment it by 1. So I'll kind of explain everything. So let's try entering this. We get hello. And what that means is we just got the first 5 characters of this thing right here, this string right here. So although we did put in 5 right there, because the stopping point is non-inclusive, it'll always slice it right before the stopping point. So it'll go all the way up to index 4 right here. So it'll kind of get everything before index 5. But then the starting point is inclusive. So let's say we want the same thing, but we just wanted, what is it? We just want the LLO right here. So as you get 0, 1, 2. So our starting point is going to be 2 because we know that's the first L. Our stopping point is going to be 5 because the 5 is going to be right before, right after the O right here. So let's type that in. So we get LLO right there. So that's kind of a useful way of, kind of doing splicing. So I'm going to kind of explain what the step is now. So say we have string right here, string 1 again, right? So if we wanted every other character of string 1, we're just gonna do, start, stop, and then step right here. So if we don't even have a stopping point right there, it's just gonna default to the very last character of the string. But now we have the step as 2. So let's do that. It just literally got every other character. So it got the H, skip the E, got the L, skip the L, and it got the O, skip the space, W, R, D. So that's kind of what the step will do for you. So what happens if you have a negative step, right? So negative step, what it'll basically do is it'll just reverse the string for you. So let's try doing that. Boom. It just reverses the string. DLROW space OLLEH. So that's kind of what the negative step will do. In the same way, you can just use this negative step. So let's say we have like a default first position, you get index 4, and then you try the negative step right there. What's going to happen? It's going to start off at the very last index right here, and go all the way to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we know that 4 is the stopping point, but because we're starting from the back right here, it's going to stop at that space right there. So it's going to take everything up to this point and just reverse it, and that's basically how string, indexing and splicing kind of works. So that's going to be all for today's lesson for strings. Make sure to like this video, leave comments, subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.